Hey, everybody. Welcome back. We're so back. It's Too Many Men time. My name is Alison Lucan, and I am delighted, as always, to welcome back. We missed her so, but she was living her best life, which means we all got to live our best lives with incredible content, lifestyle, hockey insights, everybody reading, everybody watching, everybody clicking, but only people she likes replying. It's the great Sara Sivian. Sara, how are you?
Oh, I'm great. I am fantastic. I'm glad that the Oilers beckoned us forward with a too many men call. So we had to all spawn here now.
Excellent point. Yes, thank you so much. See, she's always looping things back, creativity extraordinaire. And while we have creativity extraordinaire also with our other wonderful co-host, I don't know how she's been doing it, folks. This individual remains one of the smartest people in the world because not only was she giving us detailed analysis breakdowns of the NHL Stanley Cup Final, she was breaking down the PWHL Expansion Draft and tennis. So if you needed to know what was going on in any sport that matters, all you have to do is check in with the amazing Shayna Goldman. Shayna, say hi.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm great. It was really fun watching all the tennis. It was like a banger weekend, probably like the best finals ever. And it's really nice when it's in the morning. It balances out the playoff schedule quite well.
Good. I'm happy for
Coco.
you. I'm happy
Coco
for
was
you.
amazing. I'm so pumped.
I admittedly didn't follow much, so I'm sorry. I was bad. I try usually for you, but I didn't.
I mean, honestly, I was gonna send you a text and be like, you need to be watching this, but I'm like, you're in Seattle. It is 9 a.m. to 6 a.m. your time. Maybe you're sleeping like a human being on Sunday. But then again, it was like a 5.5 hour match. Like I thought I would be getting up and moving on with my day, and I did not move for 5.5 hours. I could not. I could not. I was frozen. So, not everyone needs that in their life.
All right. Anyway, back to she's here. She gets to lead us in to everyone's favorite segment. Sara, what time is it?
It's time for Little News.
Bit O news, my friends. Yes, there is so much going on around hockey, and it's all tremendous and it's exciting. We are recording this on Tuesday, a day early to stay in sync with this bizarre Stanley Cup final schedule, but it also allows us to break down some of the coolest stuff that is happening in hockey. And that is, as of last night, the PWHL completed their expansion draft, leading after a period where the two new teams, Vancouver and Seattle, got to go into a free agency period, signing up to 5 players. There are 2 rosters. I am so hyped. I already told y'all that Shayna's the go-to follow, in addition to our friends at the Ice Guard and our friends at Victory Press. So many people who've been covering this sport and this league for a long time. They should be the voices you listen to. But Shayna, tell us how good Seattle is. No, but seriously, tell us what you're excited about from this expansion draft.
I'm excited that I don't have to deal with that overlap anymore that I did last night because I kept having to rewind the fucking game to keep track of both. There are so many off nights in this goddamn schedule, so I was very upset by that. But if we set that aside, Um, it's so exciting because both teams look amazing, right? There was the signing period, so you could sign up to 5 players from each team. So Vancouver, they have a sick blue line. It's Jakes and Thompson off the back
Ugh,
from Minnesota. That's a huge loss.
rude.
Sarah Nurse and Jennifer Gardner up front, and Mashmeyer in goal. Like that's a great starting five. And then you look at Seattle. They went for Hillary Knight, so you have an
Legend.
icon, a
Yep.
cornerstone. Allison's friend. This is
Yes,
Bestie.
friend of the
amazing.
pod.
And they also went
Name
for
of the
Alex
pod.
Carpenter, who, we thought was a possibility. It's just the contract situation, but they also went for those up and coming stars. We see Schroeder from New York. She is an unbelievable goalie who can do a lot with a little, and we saw that with the Sirens and Kayla Barnes and Danielle Serdachny. So you saw that like up and coming franchise cornerstones too. But the draft itself, like you saw great picks on both sides of it. I mean, Hannah Bilka and Jesse Aldridge, those are amazing picks and going after defense Seattle went for. Like at first they didn't. I was a little worried because you saw Vancouver scooping up all the good D, but Seattle has a great team and Megan Carter is a really young defender. Like she's going to be really good. I thought they were going to go Savannah Harmon because she has experience playing
Mm-hmm.
with Barnes, but this was the better choice, I think, to make yourself a contender now and in the future. And on the Vancouver side of it, Ashton Bell, Maureen, Izzy Daniel, like these are sick players. I think these teams are really good. I think some of the teams are going to be reeling a bit. I think Ottawa and New York might have gotten hit the hardest here because you see the Charge, they finally make it to the final and into the playoff picture, and then they lose so much of what made them special, especially on the back end. So that's going to be really tough to weather. But I mean, let's go. 8 teams, 8 competitive teams.
It's very exciting. It's been fun here in Seattle for people who are just starting to cover and follow along with this league. It's been fun to explain how this expansion draft is very different than any NHL expansion draft, just in terms of the risk reward for the existing teams. And also, while this is so exciting for Vancouver and Seattle, the existing teams are really taking some hits, as you said, Shayna, and some of the fan bases are not happy. And Sara, I know you've been really ensconced in NHL work with travel and all of that, but do you have a vibe check or a feel for the? I've even seen some people calling for saying the original 6 teams should get the first 6 picks in the entry draft that's coming up at the end of the month because the impact to the original 6 has been so significant. And they were the first teams, obviously, to bring this sport to life in this league.
I just think it's growing pains of any franchise or any league that hopes to be there for a long time. So I'd say, guys, like you got in early and you got your teams early, and that's kind of the reward for that. And now, yes, it might take a few years of struggle, but there are also so many talented hockey players, women's hockey players that have not had an opportunity to get into the league yet. So you might be surprised by even later picks what you could get because there were so few teams. There's only so many places for people to go. So you might be pleasantly surprised by the future of somebody you might be unexpectedly on your team to overperform.
And Shayna, you mentioned New York too. Like I've seen some people saying basically like New York has struggled, right? Like this has not been the ideal start for that organization. Like in a way, with so many players being taken or moving away, in a way, it almost gives them an easy way to start a rebuild or a reconfiguration or a reimagination. Could this expansion draft actually end up giving opportunity to some of the original 6, or am I overthinking it?
No, it totally could because you look at it, you lose Alex Carpenter. That's a huge blow, right? But you also say, okay, well, they prioritize their defense, which was huge for Minnesota's back-to-back championships. If you think defense wins championships, then that is what you need to prioritize. And now you can take Carpenter's money and give it to Philly and you can build around her. Like, it's not the worst thing. I think the big difference we're going to see from the teams who might be reeling a little bit more, like losing Bell and Tarlova, like that's horrible for Ottawa. There's no other way to slice it. I wonder if they have an easier time maybe signing free agents because there's a lot of really good free agents out there this year.
Mm.
If they have an easier time when you think about the vibes and everything that's gone on and how the buildings are just like bumping every single game versus maybe New York, which hasn't had that same stability, or even Boston because they're not actually in Boston. So like those are the kind of things I'm wondering too. Like, yeah, you can say, okay, now it's time to kick off a rebuild. But on the other hand, for New York, like you need to get asses in the seats and generate the interest that maybe you don't have from other teams. And it might be a harder sell
Mm.
to
Mhm.
to do that, right? Like if your hands forced you rebuild, but if not, maybe try to think about it a little bit differently.
Going to be interesting. I'm so excited though. I'm so
I
pumped.
mean,
I
you
think
should be. That
I'm
seems
so
sick.
pumped. I'm so excited. And while Sophie is not here in Seattle, she is in Vancouver. And I have a feeling they're going to put these 2 teams against each other a lot just for geography's sake. So I'll still get to like wave at her from afar. So there it is.
I mean, that she's gonna be so good there.
She's going to be
I think
what?
it's also interesting that Vancouver went for 4 players from the Frost and Seattle has none. And it's like sometimes you can get drawn in by that whole like championship caliber, and sometimes you're like, we're just gonna stick to our guns.
Yeah, totally. Totally. All right, let's move into NHL land where while there is one series still going on, other teams are starting to get their ducks in a row. We went into this offseason, Sara, with a quarter of the league making a change behind the bench. And for one hot minute, we finally had all the seats filled. We'll get to the fact that that's no longer true in a second. But we do now have final decisions for what were the 3 teams who still needed a head coach. after the end of the regular season, and that was Seattle naming Lane Lambert as their head coach, Pittsburgh with, in my opinion, a surprise pick of Dan Muse, and Boston bringing in Marco Sturm, a coach who had been rumored to be in play at a lot of places. He seemed to be one of the hot new targets that people wanted to bring in. Sara, of those three, Seattle, Pittsburgh, and Boston, is there anything that really captures your fancy or that you were surprised by an organization's decision?
Well, I am biased because Dan Muse is from Canton,
This
Massachusetts.
is
So I love that pick. I think he's a genius. And I think that's the more, it makes sense for Dubas to like pick the analytical guy. We will see how it plays out. I am rooting for him for obvious reasons. I saw Mike Vellucci went to Chicago, which I have him in line for head coach at some point. Like what? Maybe that's the plan for Chicago later down the year. So we'll see. But obviously, he was not in Dubas's plans anymore. Well, he had his vision and he went through it. Um, Lane Lambert, I bet you're gonna love working with him, right? Like that's kind of a guy up your alley with he's a new age and people love him. And I wanted him to be a coach of a team that I covered. So I'm excited for that. He got Sturm. It was interesting. Don Sweeney said in a press conference yesterday that a lot of the coaches they interviewed were like criticizing the Bruins for like a lot of valid things about why they didn't want to like be the concerns to be the head coach, and one of them's development of the players. Because you look at that and there's like no one. So I'm curious as to why Don Sweeney admitted that after being so kind of hesitant to admit anything. And then maybe to protect Sturm a little bit, and let's see how Sturm does. I mean, he's beloved, I guess, by everybody. He had that 2018 run with Team Germany, but it's like, I mean, he's been fine with the Ontario Reign. I think the Bruins see themselves going the same direction with like a defense first thing that the Kings did. I don't know why you're like copying a team that's like not good, but we'll see what happens.
And also Pittsburgh, come on. Let's not do Dan Muse dirty like that with the picture that you
Oh my
chose for the
God.
release. I think we can. I saw pictures online that were better, but that's my 2 cents. Sara,
Yes.
any of these hires inspire you or deflate you?
I mean, Dan Muse, let's see. We got an analytics guy and he didn't have like this illustrious playing career. So I'm really excited to see what he does, you know. They're all guys that like aren't part of the normal coaching carousel, I'd say. So I'm excited to see this.
Shayna, what lit up your interest when you saw the final seats at the time get filled?
Okay. Dan Muse is definitely intriguing because I've heard nothing but good things from about him and like how smart he is, right? He's someone who uses everything at his disposal and is creative and is one of these like up and coming minds. And then the one criticism is, does he have the chops to be a head coach? And I find that one really interesting, that whole conversation, because sometimes you do see these inexperienced head coaches get jobs. Think of John Cooper, right? Like he didn't have that experience and they gave him Rick Bonus. So I'm wondering, will he get that veteran? Even think Lindy Ruff was the holdover for David Quinn at the beginning of his time in New York, right? Like that's kind of how it works. So do they have that person with like that people management experience join the bench as traditionally happens, or do you just let him cook? Because I think too, you could say, oh, does he have what it takes to be a head coach? Does he have the right attitude, the right mold? And you go, so should he have the attitude of all these other guys who have failed out a million times too? Like maybe we need to think a little more critically to think about it differently. So very intrigued to see how that one works out. The other one's Lane Lambert. We see a lot of coaches learn a lot between their first and second times as head coaches, right? You think of Mike Sullivan, you can think of Scott Arniel, you can think of Bruce Cassidy. Sometimes you need to fail to learn and see what you need to do differently. And with Lambert, it doesn't fall solely on his shoulders, right? Like he was handed a well-oiled machine in a sense, a well-oiled defensive machine on Long Island. But with Barry Trotz, he was this defensive specialist that you kind of saw the offense wear down over the years. And Lambert wanted to change that and get more offensive. And it came at the expense of their defense. And then both were bad. I also think the rest of his staff seem more like Lamoriello picks than Lane Lambert picks. So when he went back to Toronto, we kind of saw him get back to those strengths of being that elite penalty killing coach we know him to be from his time with the Islanders, the Capitals, the Predators. And you think of how good he was with Trotz. I think now it's more about learning who he is as a coach and separating himself from those that identity that he's had for so long, if that makes sense, and kind of carving out his own path. And I think this is a really cool opportunity for him to do it because I think he did a lot of good in his capacity. He was an elite assistant coach, right? And I think we've seen other coaches that be the case. I think Sacco is a good example too. Like, I don't think he's meant to be a head coach, but he's someone that's so good in the role that like he's held for so long. So it's Lambert's chance to separate himself from that and to see what he learned and what he can do differently here.
I'm intrigued. Lane talked to the media yesterday, and I'm actually excited to see. Plus, he's got a beard now.
The
Oh,
hair, the beard, it's like it's all giving. I like that.
Which, obviously these are the things that matter.
of
And
course.
Shane, I'll ask you to chime in on one other not head coaching hire, but a return. These are always curious to me. I don't know what I think, but I know you have an opinion already, and that is that David Quinn, who used to be the head coach at the Rangers, is now back as an assistant coach. That seems weird.
It's very weird. But then you have to keep in mind that like he worked with Sullivan in Pittsburgh these last couple of years, and he did not get that head coaching job in Pittsburgh, so it's a chance for him to keep choking. Choking, wow, coaching.
I
I'm
was
sorry,
like,
that was
Shayna,
subconscious. It's a chance for him to keep coaching. Um, I I'm hit or miss on this one. Like I'm very interested to see how it goes because I think Mike Sullivan is exactly the coach the Rangers need. And I think David Quinn knows how to design a power play. And you think of what he did with the power play in New York, and it wasn't just the personnel because we saw that same personnel this year fall on their faces, right? Like Adam Fox developed really well under him. I don't think it was because of Quinn. I think he had the natural instincts to be that good, but I think he took him to the next level. And we saw Mika Zibanejad play some of his best hockey, and I don't think he's going to go anywhere. I think he's going to play under Quinn. So the criticism of Quinn was he didn't handle any of the up and coming talent, right? Kako and Lafreniere and all those guys didn't excel under him. The other part of it is, while I think he'll be good with Ranger power play, which definitely needs it, I'm a little more worried about how he deploys defense. And I think in Pittsburgh, the roster wasn't perfect, but I don't think he gave the right guys the ice time and the minutes that they should have gotten, and it added to their problems. So we'll see how that looks outside of Pittsburgh. It's the one element that I'm like, is that really the move? I'm not so sure, but we'll definitely see. I think he has a lot to learn as a head coach, and sometimes being an assistant is the best way to do that. And I think we are seeing a lot of current head coaches thrive in those roles. Carberry was that. Lane Lambert was, that elite assistant. Ross Brindamore, the one of the longest tenured head coaches, was an
People
assistant coach
forget.
for. What were you gonna say?
Just people forget.
They do. They do. Like it's the same thing with like Cooper. Like where did he come from? The AHL. Okay, maybe that's the move. These are first time head coaches, but everyone forgets that part too.
I still think it's weird, but anyway, that's
It's
fine.
very weird. I'm intrigued. It's unfortunate assistant coaches don't meet with the media more, but I have to think he's someone that would like he has to, right? Like he has to talk to
Yeah.
people in the beginning.
This is the thing, and that is so in my experience, that is controlled by head coaches. That is a decision by head coaches whether or not they're going to make their assistants available to the media. And I can't stress enough, like you absolutely should do that, organizations. Like, first of all, it gives your head coach a break from time to time, and it lets those people develop on their own in terms of their own individual careers. And it's interesting. So
I
stop
think
I
I
mean,
locking them up.
knowing the New York media, like there have been times even in Raleigh and Boston where like I just know the assistant coach personally and they are allowed to talk to me. They just like don't make them available. So I'm sure there'll be like Larry Brooks will message him or something.
Yeah, for sure. But
yeah, right.
But I'm
that's what I'm
blocked, so I
saying.
won't be able to see it. So someone show me.
But they should, that's my point. They should be formally made available. I think that's
Yeah, yeah,
valuable.
yeah,
And,
I
Yeah.
agree.
and you should be able to request them
Yeah.
and then let them talk. So
That was Tampa Bay did that a lot. And I remember like hearing the questions for Derek Lalonde and I would be like annoying Joe Smith when he was writing there, be like, can you ask him this for me? And you would get these really thoughtful answers about the penalty kill and what they're doing or the Selkie race and things like that. And it was part of the reason why I thought you would be a better head coach in Detroit, right? Because you
Right.
actually got to hear from him and be like, this guy knows exactly what he's talking about. And that's another one too. Like we're gonna see now he's going to Toronto to replace Lambert. So that'll be something while guys like Bob Bootner and Ray Bennett are going to Long Island after failing in Detroit and Colorado. Like I'm very, very interested in this year's coaching carousel.
Well, speaking of the coaching carousel, we all thought we were done. We thought all 8 seats are filled. Everything is good. We're moving on to the next steps. And then after the goalie poll heard round the world, but apparently also a slew of very damning exit interviews, Pete DeBoer, who has been to like every Western Conference final in the past 9 years or whatever it is, has done it with different teams because he seems to be effective, but he also seems to flame out quickly because he is out as the Dallas Stars head coach. And now Dallas has to find a bench boss after, again, 8 new coaches were hired. And it does seem like there aren't a super ton of candidates out there. There's going to be some interesting digging, perhaps, by Dallas. Sara, were you shocked by this move? This does seem to be DeBoer's MO, that this is what happens. He comes in, teams are really good, but he flames out and then he's gone in a short time and moves on. Were you surprised by this? And do you think this is the right move for the Stars?
No, I'm not at all surprised, especially the second that he started talking about Jake Ottinger. That's your franchise goalie, and you can't really, I'm not blaming him, but like you can never say that. You just can't say that if you want the vibes to continue to trend up, even if you secretly believe it or something. While it's a lose-lose situation because if you look at what happened during the game, like you shouldn't believe that. You were the coach through all those too. It's like you talk about he has a sample size. You were the coach during those games. He was playing. So I don't really know like what you're doing. But yeah, that was kind of the writing on the wall there that he was done. I'm kind of over it, to be honest. I feel like he just maybe runs people into the ground a little bit, and then when the course is over, it's like not a sustainable way to be a head coach, and it's like kind of hard on the players. I'm just like over the whole thing.
Yeah, Sarah's right, Shayna. I mean, the Ottinger thing certainly was not great, but by all accounts, it was not the deciding factor. So this move by Dallas, do you think it's ultimately going to be the right thing to do, even if there aren't a ton of, perhaps this might be unfair to say, but grade A coaching candidates out there right at this moment that we see?
Yeah, I think it's the right move. I think you had to at this point because the Ottinger situation to me was not the first straw, it was the final straw. That it was like
100%.
this is not going to work. This is a guy everyone's going to look at the playoff resume and go, "Oh, he's Mr. Game 7." Okay, is he Mr. Game 7 in the Stanley Cup Final? Because he's not even getting there.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's so funny when people say, "Well, look how many playoff wins he has." Okay, but for
Uh,
players, how many times do we hear it? Like how many playoff? It's not how many playoff games does he have? It's how many Stanley Cup rings does he have? Why is it a different standard for coaches versus players sometimes? Like that gets me. The other part of it is there were so many questionable decisions. And I think we can't forget, and we talked about this a lot last week on the podcast.
Hmm.
You look at that whole last month of play. You look at from Four Nations on. Yes, they lost Mira Heiskanen. Yes, they were going to be worse as a result because they were playing guys like Cece in those minutes. But you look at the deployment decisions around there, right? Like the defense was in shambles. And then you go into the postseason and look at their 5-on-5 goal scoring, and it's completely dried up. They're scoring a ton on the power play, but they're not scoring at even strength. You have to go at a certain point. Okay, what's the issue here? So if Jake Ottinger isn't perfect, which you know he might not be against Edmonton because you're saying he has this horrible record against Edmonton, then why are you not doing enough to maximize your scoring? Why are you burying Jamie Benn in matchup minutes that he's struggling in? Why are you putting together a first line that doesn't have a proven track record together instead of the lines that you knew worked? Why aren't you mixing and matching things better, splitting up your defense? Like there's a million things you could say that led to that moment, and then you mishandled this situation. It was like the nail in the coffin. The fact that there's not grade A options out there, I think is a good thing because I think Jim Nill could go for that under the radar pick that we're not talking about enough instead of the names we've heard cycle over and over and over again who do nothing, right? At the end of the day, like it's like these overrated veteran coaches. We see teams that go for the inexperienced person when they fail, they go for the most experienced to go completely the opposite. Now I want to see, the opposite happen here. Like maybe there's a name we're not thinking about that they have up their sleeve.
So, Sara, the coaching change might not be the only thing for Dallas, as often happens with teams when they go out the wrong way or in a particularly flaming out way. There's always a lot of, oh, geez, what are they going to have to change? And the teams are coming back from the combine last week, which many are saying was the opportunity for most GMs to have those face-to-face conversations since the draft is virtual this year. So there's lots of rumors. And one of those is that Jason Robertson might be on the block from Dallas as they look to make other moves, one of which is to maintain Mikael Granlund on the Stars, which is interesting. But Sara, do you think that these rumors are for real? And do you think that if Jason Robertson is not a star, next season that Dallas did the right thing?
Oh, I kind of like it. I like Jim Nill's whole, he is not afraid to be aggressive. And in his aggression, he got Granlund and Rantanen, and now he's got Rantanen locked down. So it really is like, okay, you have space and time to consider this, and the cap is rising. So it's kind of like there could be you, it's one of those things like with Rantanen, right? You had to see exactly what the return is before you could count it in or out. But I feel like they were able to maintain Wyatt Johnston with the Rantanen deal. They lost Stankoven, but I don't know. It's like when you can't, you're like when you think about the trade that brought Kachuk into the Panthers. It's kind of, and like all these trades, like in the Sabres with Reinhart, things like this. It's like there had to be big moves made to get past that third round vibe. So I just kind of feel like, what the hell? Sure, let's see what happens.
Shayna, if the Stars move Jason Robertson, obviously a very, very good, very young player with, I think, 2 years of control remaining on his contract, 1 year of
Oh,
control.
well, 1 year until he's an RFA.
Yeah, okay, thank you. On his current contract, what would Dallas ideally want to be getting back when they know they have a nice A-chip piece like Jason Robertson that they would be willing to move?
I just don't see how they could win a deal. I'm gonna
Mm,
be honest, like because I think they'd be selling low at this
mm,
point and going, well, look, he doesn't perform in the playoffs, and it's like he came to the postseason hurt, and
yeah.
I thought he was actually pretty damn good despite that this year.
He
I know he
scored the
has
only
no,
2 goals in the last 2 games.
yeah, doesn't that count for anything? And maybe that's the difference between being healthy to play versus being back at full strength type thing, right? Like there you go. Maybe it took him longer to cook. Um, if you're going to make this move, I think the problem is you're going to hurt your winger depth because yes, Granlund you might extend, and then you have Marchment coming up in a year, and maybe you extend him. But a 29-year-old Marchment signing for potentially, I don't know, 6, 7 million versus Robertson, maybe getting up to that $9 million range. It's just the cost efficiency isn't there. But if you insist on doing this, I feel like you need to get maybe a game breaking center, depending on how they plan to use Wyatt
Mm,
Johnston, right? Because if they feel that he's better down the middle and he could be the 1C of the future with Rantanen, or maybe it's Hintz and Rantanen, and then Johnston's the driver of the second line, like there's that balance. But if you don't think he is going to be your center, I think they need a little more higher end talent there. And then you could keep Sagan on the wing and kind of maximize guys around it because we don't know what they're going to do at Matt Duchene this summer either, which is like the wild card in all of this. And Granlund, I think if you're going to maximize his game, it's on the wing too. So that's one path to take. Um, if not, I guess you're just looking for another winger, right? Say you move Robertson and you have the opportunity to sign Marner, like now there's a conversation to have.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I
mm.
just don't see you getting someone of equal or better talent. So it's really tough. And then their best strength is having one of the deepest forward groups in the league. You're gonna knock that down. So I feel like that's what they have to replace. I mean, personally, I would just keep that and let Jamie Benn walk and let, Granlund walk. But what do I
Honestly.
know?
Yeah, exactly. All right, we've talked about a lot of pieces that have moved or may be moving. Let's talk about 3 pieces that are staying. We have had 3 extensions signed, and they are as follows. I'll ask you both if there's any of these that interest you or that you want to discuss, or we've just shared them as news items and we move on. The first is, I'm going to save my favorite one for last because it's wild. Kyle Palmieri extends for 2 years, 4.7 mil with the Islanders. Noah Cates, 4 years times 4 with the Flyers. And then the one everyone saw coming, Yanni Gourde, 6 years, 2.3 per year with the Lightning, which, first of all, good for him, but my goodness gracious, that's going to be an interesting one to watch. Sarah, do any of these 3 intrigue you at all?
Yeah, when you're saying good for him, that's when you really know like what the hell are they doing? I don't know, but I hope he has fun.
Shayna, any of them interest you at all?
Yeah, like Palmieri, sure, good, totally understood. Noah Cates, big fan of his game. Good for you. Good for the team. But the Gord one is so intriguing to me because at first I was like, 6 years, are you insane? But then the more I thought about it, I'm like, wait, 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 let them cook. I kind of like this. Yes, it's buyout proof, but the reality is he isn't 35 years old. This is not going to stay on the books. If he was 35, I would say, okay, someone take away the checkbook and just put Tampa Bay in a timeout. But we're not there yet. I don't know if he plays the full 6 years of this. And if he retires, it doesn't matter, right? I think you're looking at it going, if we get 3 or 4 good years of Yanni Gord, and I think that there's that kind of money that could go on your fourth line and you won't even like think
100%.
about it, right? Like, but I think reasonably thinking, okay, for year 1 and 2, maybe he's like middle six and then he shifts to like bottom six for the next 2 years, and then the 2 years after that, if he retires, so be it. But then again, you're like, if he's still playing, so be it, because reasonably, the Lightning's window is now, not then. We already know they're going to be in hell in a couple years when their core ages out. They have no prospects, no picks, whatever. Like they're going to be in trouble unless they think pull literally a rabbit out of their hat. So if you have Gord around then, it doesn't fucking matter. If this is what it took to get the money down, great. The center market absolutely sucks this summer.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
they need the
Yeah.
help. And he's a great fit
Mhm.
there. He was a great fit there years ago, and he was a great fit there when he came back too. Like they threw him on the top line and he was productive. They could use him
Yeah.
anywhere in the lineup. Like this, to me, you're getting another year of Gord and Bjorkstrand after you spent a ton on both of them. This is exactly it. And now you have the money to maybe go for one more top nine forward. I actually, the more I think about it, the more I like it, and I don't just go, "This is insane for Tampa Bay."
Yeah, I mean it's definitely creative because to Sarah's point, the cap is going up, so there's going to be more money. So Yanni gets to ensure he's somewhere where he wants to be. He can
Yeah.
still contribute, and he's allowing the team to continue to try to build so he can be part of a contending team versus sucking up a ton of money for a short time. And you can find creative ways out of the final years if you need to, but who's to say? Yanni Gord has defied the odds his entire career. So
It's
watch,
also different. His ceiling, he's not starting at a fourth line value, right? Like when
right.
when Toronto gave this money to someone like David Camp, because it always affects the Leafs, you're looking at it going like his ceiling is like he is what he is, and it's only going down from here. Gord, we're saying this is a top nine guy. He could play one, two, three lines, no problem. So to me, like if you're gonna spend this money on depth players, when generally the strategy should be rotating that cast like the Panthers do, right? And that's what makes them successful. This is the way to do it if you're gonna do it.
Totally agree. All right, those are the changes and the bits and the moving and all of that that's happening. But guys, there is still hockey being played. We just are on the heels of a game three that certainly felt different. We're going to break down game three in more detail, but the first two games of the Stanley Cup Final, as we all know, were a rematch of Edmonton and Florida. The only thing changing significantly is that home ice belongs to the Islanders. The whom? The Oilers.
That was like with a Pittsburgh accent.
The choking
How dare
Islanders
you?
today.
How dare you? How dare you? But the Oilers have home ice, and the first two games were neck and neck, both requiring overtime. Game two requiring double overtime. It seemed like these two teams couldn't be better matched, and it was going to be a thrilling final. Our very own Sara Civian had the opportunity to be there in person and not just cover what was amazing, amazing hockey, but be in a city that loves its team, that is passionate, and to also connect with all of the media people who are going to cover a Stanley Cup final. Sara, we're just going to give the floor to you to share with us your takeaways, be it on ice, off the ice, in the casino, whatever you want to talk about from games one and
Yeah.
two.
Yes, my hotel, it was tastefully outdated. There was a casino in it, but it wasn't nice. Like it wasn't a nice place. And there's a casino. I just like don't understand. There was an aquarium in the bar, and there was a piano bar, and it was like at Disney when it's like no one's playing the
Oh, yeah,
piano,
yeah.
but it's like the keys are going down. Like
Oh my God.
that's where I stayed at, like 10 minutes south of the downtown, but it was only 10 minutes south. So hell yeah to that. The people there were just amazing. Like it's the fourth smallest market in the NHL, and like you would just walk around and there's not one person who didn't have Oilers gear on, and like
Mm.
I'd have to go. I don't know where to go, right? So like after a game, when I finish everything up, it's like midnight. I found this one spot called Bird Dog to like have dinner that was still open, and every night like someone who was in Oilers gear would just walk up to me and start having a conversation, and I'm like, nice to meet you. Like it was great to just like salt of the earth people that like just know everything about their hockey team, want the hockey team to win, whatever, but are also so proud of their city and just like we're so happy that I liked it. I don't know, I just loved that. That was so nice. And God, one of the nights we went line dancing.
Shut up.
Yeah, no, seriously. Casey Hines, who used to cover the Hurricanes, just took a job like 3 weeks ago to cover the Panthers, and she was from Calgary. So we were at the media. Thank you, Gary, for the 4,000 drinks at the media night. But we went across the street and it was like line dancing. She was like, "Sarah, you got to come like learn how to line dance." So I'm just like, I couldn't do it, but everybody did it so casually. I was like blown away. But that was great. And yes, of course, those were two of the best hockey games I've ever witnessed. I can't believe they were in the Stanley Cup final, but obviously just like in a matchup so kind of boring because it's so good. It was so nice to have overtimes, double overtimes, and like the old guys scoring.
I've never thought I'd say, all right, if we ever go to a hockey game in Edmonton, we got to learn how to line dance. But now,
Yeah.
like, this is a full commitment that I respect and love. This is the new journey.
We need like a bingo. Like if we go to a Utah game, we're gonna have to get our crazy ass
Yep.
sodas. If we're gonna go to Edmonton, we're gonna line like we'll have to come up with all of our little like
We have to say Yahoo
It was killing me.
in
Yes, Yahoo
Calgary and
Yeehaw.
scream Yeehaw instead.
I was basically at the Stampede. I guess Alberta just in its self is a cowboy type of place. And I was the cowgirl.
Sarah, in all seriousness, I was because you hear this all the time, right? Like it's the loudest I've ever heard a cry. Like
Yeah.
how insane was it inside? Because those games were
Yeah.
electric and there was like there were massive moments, late goals to tie it up and force overtime, winners, Brad Marchand being Brad Marchand. Like what was the pop like there? What was the energy like?
When it's the juxtaposition of it getting so quiet and then getting so loud. It's like you feel like you're in a haze. So when they had that call on the Brad Marchand double overtime, people were kind of criticizing it for not caring that much about the Panthers or whatever. I'm like, nobody, including Brad, even knew that went in because you're just like living in a haze until that happens. But I will say, when Corey Perry tied it up with 17.8 seconds left, that rivals with when opening night when the Hurricanes got playoff hockey back. That was the loudest I've ever seen a hockey arena like in my life.
So the games were electric. Before we get to the total change in tone, Shayna, from the games one and two, what were you thinking about this series before game three, games one and two?
I was thinking, this is amazing. Give me 7 games. I want more overtimes. I'm loving every moment of this because there was so much hype around a potential rematch. And then there was also that worry of like, don't let the Panthers get hot and, as you said, get their claws into them. So Edmonton coming in strong, like I was loving it. I thought it was so interesting, like the fact that they were able to come back against the Panthers after these controversial coaching challenges and things like that. Like it kind of like took the narratives that we know of this postseason and threw them out the door. And I was like, that makes this series so much better. And Draisaitl scoring when he wasn't last time around. So already you're like, this is great. And then you have game two. And, to me, a tied series going back to Florida, I'm like, this is great. Like I love this. I thought to see Marchand cooking, I'm like, this is so much fun. He's been dominant, and it's funny to me too. A lot of the narratives of like, I didn't know he was this good. Then I'm
Like
sorry. We
what?
need to fucking critically think here. Like, I don't want to just sound like a snob and be like, well, I knew he was going to be good. But like, there are signs that he still had it in Boston, but the team around him was a disaster. And anytime that you're going to acquire a player, you're taking this bet that you don't know necessarily how they're going to click with your team. As much as you can account for it and estimate, at the end of the day, you don't know how it's actually going to work out, right? Are the coaches going to use them correctly? Are they going to find, the right characteristics to mesh with? Are they going to put them in the right role? Like, there's a million things that can go right and wrong. We know that in hockey.
This
And then there's just
narrative, sorry, oh
go.
my God, I'm like talking over you, but it's just like I didn't want to forget because it's so true. You made me remember that there's randomly a narrative about Brad Marchand. Oh my God, I can't believe the year after Bergeron retired and it was first year as captain, he scored a career year in goals, if I'm not mistaken. Like he was fine and he continued to be fine as the team was getting worse around it. So I don't understand why people are like shocked that he's good.
Yeah, he had 4 teammates this year.
Yeah.
Underlying numbers were positive. His microstats were still positive. There were all these signs like, okay, so he's not the guy. Okay. He doesn't have to be at this point in his career. And that's not how the Panthers are going to use him, right?
Yeah.
We all knew if any team knows how to throw someone in and maximize their strengths, it's going to be Florida, but they're using him in a totally different way with different talent around him. So to me, it's not like this. And also, he's sick in the playoffs. So add that in. Plus, he gets to be on a team that truly embraces the Rat King energy and says, bring it every single night and then some.
Mhm.
Like, I don't know. I don't understand how it's like, Are we surprised he's this much of a difference maker and we're talking about him more than the Matthew Kachucks and Barkovs of the world? I'll have that conversation, but let's not be surprised he's still good.
Well, but I think and this is true for literally every player, right? And it's kind of what we just talked about with Yanni Gord is that a player at their best doesn't mean they are the best on the team,
Mhm.
right? So if you put a player in the role they're supposed to be in, and I would argue too, in Boston, he played with so many legends for so long, he was always kind of a secondary cast member, which is fine, right? Like everyone knew who he was, but he wasn't the guy. And so now he's back in a role that's perfect for him. He is a little bit older, and now he and Sam Bennett are leading the final in goals scored. And you I think it's people think that, I mean, of course you need a McDavid, of course you need a Draisaitl, of course you need a Kachuk, right? But you can also have electric difference makers in different roles. They aren't just necessarily always the stars, per
There's
se.
also something to be said about the matchup game, right? Where it's
100%.
like the Panthers are so good because it's somebody like look at their third. When's the last time we remembered like you could name every single person on the third? I mean, we can
Tampa Bay.
always do that, but
It
like
was
How
this, it
many
was the
Tampa
gourd
exactly.
Bay's
line. It was the
third
gourd
line has
line.
been
Exactly.
taught.
Yeah,
Gord
Yeah.
Coleman and Barclay Goodrow has been talked about up until this year, right? Like
yeah,
now this is going to be the new look grind line that takes over the narrative.
And that's
yep,
kind of what John Cooper was saying when he was like, this is kind of like that used to be us, now it's them. And it's kind of like the next dynasty in hockey, right? Where it's like you have to have a memorable line on every single line. And it's even like yesterday where Reinhardt scored. You're like, oh, that guy was leading their team last year.
yep.
So it's just kind of like go figure. But it really is like maybe the beauty of fitting into a role is like you're playing against maybe the other team's weaker lines and you get to break through more.
100%. So we have these first two games, right? They're electric. You don't know who's going to win. You can feel the momentum shifting back and forth. It's unclear who you think really is the better team. And then, my friends, game three happened. Now, I will admit, I was watching this from a local watering hole with Stephen and a friend of ours. So at first I was watching, but I was also like, every time I kept looking up, like another penalty. And then I was also like, another goal. And Edmonton became completely unraveled. They lose 6-1. They give Florida 11, let me say it again, 11 power plays in one game. Stuart Skinner is pulled. So now we have that dynamic going on. And Sara, you mentioned this a little bit. Obviously, Florida now, this was their first game on home ice. You mentioned the matchup game. Is this just Florida showing that when they are fully in control of all the factors on their home ice, that they are still the better team? I mean, we have to expect a counterpunch from Edmonton, but they really looked unglued to me and like they'd lost who they were last night.
I mean, you could say, okay, Draisaitl in the first two games had 15 shots and he had zero shots in
Zero.
game three. And
Zero
you could
shot
say,
attempts.
yeah, isn't that crazy? You can say it's because the Panthers were playing good defense, but I think the beauty of playing good defense is you don't have to because you're on the power play for half of the game. I think that's kind of obviously the Panthers are so good at not just like drawing a penalty, but also just like
At
knowing what
wedding?
to do in that situation. Drawing. Is that it? I'm like trying to think of what the word.
That's the right
Drawing.
word.
Yeah,
Drawing.
but she put an R in there.
Oh,
Drawing.
okay. That's a Boston thing. Like
Okay, we'll
the
allow it.
drawer, the
Okay.
drawer.
Okay, go ahead. Florida's so good at drawing a
Yeah.
penalty.
So it's just,
Oh,
and then
I
we
thought we
know
were saying
exactly.
jarring, like
Oh,
Jarring. That's where I'm just like,
well,
oh,
they
you're
are
saying it's so
jarring.
jarring
God.
the way that they're playing. I'm like, okay, okay, I'm
We're as
in.
discombobulated as the Oilers right now. Go ahead, Sara.
They thrive in the chaos. That's all you can kind of say about that. I mean, I don't know. I think the Oilers needed more of a push. I think you want Jeff Skinner in there instead of a hurt Ryan Nugent Hopkins. I
Mm,
think, um, God, the matchup game, of course, when you're on home ice, it's a different story. But I also think once you let the game unravel like that, it just gets to a point. I mean, I think the game breaking moment for me is the Reinhardt goal that's like after the Corey Perry goal. And
yeah.
you can't, three of the four power plays in the first were in the offensive zone, and the other one was too many men. Why are you doing that against the Florida Panthers? You just like can't. I just think you can't. You cannot have any break. You cannot give them an inch. I will say the Oilers have been an extremely resilient team in the game after they lose. So I'm going to say Skinner, I mean, it wasn't totally his fault. He was shaky at first and they kind of exploited that. But I will say so many things happened in the power play. I'm glad they pulled him. And then it's like, all right, get out there next game. It's game four is just absolutely huge.
Yeah, game four is massive. And good call by you pulling out the RNH injury. That he was a game time decision if you weren't following along. It seems like speculation is that it's something with his hand or wrist. I have no direct information. Those are just the reports coming out of people who are covering the series more closely. But Shayna, to build on what Sara just said, I think we all know game four is massive. Was game three about Florida potentially showing they can take control of this series? Or do you think, and I'm way oversimplifying it, but was it just an off night for Edmonton?
No, I think Florida's showing that they can take control of the series, and I think that they played this game better than anybody, that they know how to rattle their opponents, right? Like they know how to rile them up and get them off their game, that they're focusing on that instead of playing hockey at the end of the day. And I think the Oilers, from puck drop, were off their game. I think the Panthers took the momentum of winning in overtime last game and what was a close game and literally just carried that right back home. We're like, our foot is on the gas and we are not taking it off here. And the Oilers are literally like struggling under them, like flailing and screaming, and nothing's changing. And it's like, okay, like the Evander Kane offensive zone, two
Oh, Evander
offensive zone
Kane needs to
penalties, dude,
shut
get your
up.
shit together.
He's the worst.
I'm like, that is not it. That's not everyone wants to just, oh, look at his impact. And he was on the shovel all year. Look at his
Look at his
impact.
children. Like, I don't know. They were literally okay. One other thing about when I was in Edmonton, they were like parading around his children. I'm like, I understand that this is a like comeback, whatever. Like, they're trying to make it into a feel good story. I'm like,
I
all
don't
right,
like it.
Not a
here we
feel
Don't
are,
good
like it.
game
story.
There's
Yeah,
three.
there's
no.
way too many
Yeah,
like video packages on him, and I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah,
I
I
don't
want to
care
hear
how
about
many goals
anybody
you
else.
score. And yeah, forget it.
Yeah,
Forget it.
it drives me up a wall. But you just saw like the Oilers can be more physical, right? They were talking about it this year. They're going into this and they feel like they're less emotional than last year and they're more like on business and they're also more physical than last year. But even if all of that's true, one, the emotions got to you, and two, you're not built to play the game that the Oilers are, that the Panthers are built to play. They got in your head and they're living there rent free, and you just completely were unhinged from start to finish. And the Panthers are so good at goading them, and they went for it. Yes, the Panthers walk the line. They do things that aren't perfectly legal, right? We know that there's a million borderline plays a game, but you can't be doing that the entire. It wasn't just in the third period when the game was out of reach. Like it was from puck drop. The other part of it that I think is going to get lost in everything because we're talking about Marchand and Sam Bennett is that the Barkov line scored, right? The Reinhart goal. That's huge because I was watching thinking in games 1 and 2, like, is Reinhart 100%? We know he left the game at one point, like earlier. We know that everybody's dealing with something, but also with Barkov, like you're playing Connor McDavid the entire game, literally the entire game, because now Connor McDavid's killing penalties, so you don't even get a rest from him on the power play like you should. And we saw guys like Eichel get slowed down because they can't play to their offensive strengths when they're constantly trying to defend McDavid. And we've also seen Barkov shut down guys like Kucherov already this postseason and, do his work with Matthews. So the fact that now he's scoring and they have three lines going while the Oilers, the Draisaitl line is not scoring. So now McDavid, there's even more pressure on, and that third line isn't doing much of anything either. You're just like, this is a problem. There are a bunch of problems all coming to a head at once.
So let's talk about, and Sara, you already gave us kind of the take on game three, and I agree, but let's talk about the goaltending because I thought particularly early, I mean, as much as everything you guys both said is a million percent true, Bob was exceptional, particularly on the penalty kill. Like he was making saves and I was like, whoa, like that's impressive. But Skinner wasn't terrible. I didn't love the first goal, the first Marchand goal, but I didn't think he was enough of a difference maker, and Bob was. Are we worried about Edmonton's goaltending, Shayna?
Yes, but I'm more worried about the fact that the defense is now letting him down. I think
Mm,
that's a big reason why Skinner was able to get back on his game, right? Like he has two awful games, he gets pulled against LA. He comes back against Vegas. Game 1 he was not good. But after that you saw that commitment to team defense, that he was more shielded, he had more goal support, he had more defensive support. So you didn't need him to be the guy. You just needed him to make a couple timely saves, and I think he was doing that and then some, especially against Dallas, right? Like he rose to the occasion. Now you're coming into it, and I think that team defense, you're seeing the Panthers get to the middle more. You're also seeing them win these board battles and just grind out the Oilers, and then they're out of position. In game 2, there were a couple of sequences that were just completely chaotic. In game two, it was like in the second period, there was with a few minutes left, like the Panthers were just destroying the Oilers, like around the boards, and then they just started hitting them with all these scoring chances, and the defense was just flopping everywhere. So now you have the chaos in front of the net, and then Skinner himself is chaotic in net, especially against chances like that. And you're like, this is where it might all be going south, and it feels like it's just kind of like spiraled from there. And it obviously was terrible last night. Like Skinner didn't look good, but I think he was way more exposed than he should have been.
Sara, anything to add? I know you already gave your take on Skinner last game, but anything to add on the goaltending from your perspective?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I never thought this is the direction they should have gone in their goaltending, and I don't think so. He's overperforming what I thought he was going to do, and that's kind of what I have to say about that. But I, oh, it's just it's tough with Nurse sometimes for me because I want him to do
Ugh.
good, and I think they have to put him in because he makes so much money. But like, what if they
I did
didn't have
not
to
like
do
his
that?
game last
I
game.
I want them to put like Troy Stetcher back in. Oh, it's like that's my hot take for the day.
I like that a lot, actually.
So we have talked about the fact that game four is huge. We've also talked about the fact that Edmonton has shown an ability to rebound, particularly this postseason. We know how dialed in Connor McDavid is to want to win this cup. Let's just do this for shits and giggles. No real analysis. Just take your pick. Sara, who wins game four?
Spoilers.
Shayna,
My
pick.
heart says Oilers, my head says Panthers. I just
Oh,
I don't I
I'm going Panthers. I'm going Panthers. We'll see. We'll see who's right and who's wrong. All right, let's wrap this one up. It's a hell of a cup final, y'all. It's crazy. The change in tenor was just insane. All right, let's wrap this one up with some more picks and everyone's favorite game, and that is Fuck, Marry, Kill. We're totally shifting back to those teams, which is all but two, that are in the off season. And Sara, as is tradition, you will go first. FMK, which team would you want to be managing through this upcoming off season? Your choices are Toronto, Dallas, and Vegas.
I'm killing Toronto. I mean, can you imagine? No matter what you do, no one's going to be happy. And I don't even know what you would do. Like, what is the return for Mitch Marner? Are you
Mm,
sure? And then like you were already kind of handcuffed when you tried to trade him before. So it's just the vibes are so bleak when there's everyone's talking in your ear. So killing that. I'm going to fuck Vegas. I think there's some potential for fun in there, right? I think Marner might want to go to Vegas. So that's like the true evil prophecy being
you
fulfilled. And
imagine?
then you can, yeah, I mean, kind of hearing in the grapevine, that's the case. So they'd make that work, but it's still like, oh, there's so many tough decisions coming up there that this was one of their maybe last shots, and there's a lot to do. There's a lot of work. And I'm marrying Dallas. I think, well, because Jim Nill, maybe it's just because Jim Nill has done so well that like, oh my God, I wouldn't want to replace him. But I think he's paved the way of like making aggressive moves and like there's less, there's pressure, right? But you kind of already did the Rantanen thing. So now it's kind of okay. All you got to do, let Jamie Benn walk. I think I'd go in there and be like, bye, Jamie. Like I'm coming in,
the Jamie
bad
Renaissance
cop.
over.
Yeah.
Bye. I'm
Yeah,
with
that's
you.
what I do. So there you go.
Jamie Benn, you're going down.
Yeah. Oh, for once.
Hey, Shayna, your picks.
Okay. I'm gonna kill Vegas actually because I think they would be a ton of fun to manage. But like that evil empire has done their thing that like I don't know how I'd contend with that, right? Like
Mm.
they've done so much. They have a lot of long-term contracts to negotiate, and yes, they're gonna get a ton of free agents and do things like that. But I'm like, no, I need to bring some spice somewhere else because I feel like my spice will always be compared to that spice, and I don't know if I could compete with it. Um, I am going to marry Dallas. I don't think I think Jim Nill has made mistakes over the last year, but I don't think it's to a point where it's like irreparable. Like you don't need to trade Jason Robertson because you signed,
Irreparable.
yeah, same thing.
Irreparable.
This is why I'm a writer. Um, I have this issue where like words come into my head and it's like I think I know how to say them and then they come out of my mouth and it's like it doesn't line up what's in my head, but I'm just gonna try to like bowl through
It's
it.
okay.
But
You did great. You're
it's
doing great,
fine.
sweetie.
Um, but yeah, like yeah, you signed Ilya Lyubushkin for 2 years, but at least like Dumba and Cece are coming off the books. Like there's a way to navigate this situation. I think that they're in a good position. I think it's funny the narratives around them, like look at their position versus the Canes, and it's like yeah, the Canes have a better one, but like for me with Dallas, like there's still a lot of there's a good foundation to work around and to push them to the next level. Like they're there, they just need that final push. So I think that could be interesting. I will fuck Toronto. Um, they say pressure is a privilege, you know? And I would like that privilege to navigate the impossible and I feel like if you can survive in Toronto for a couple years and do something different from the last era, and I disagree with a lot of the last era, I think you can carve yourself out a role forever. Like you're hockey man enough at that point that you like you'll be golden. And the thing is, like, I don't necessarily agree with some of this, like some of the choices they've made over the last year that it's like you can see what you'd want to do and what you'd want to get rid of to clear the decks enough to have that like mobility to make the changes that I don't think you'll have in Vegas necessarily.
All right. I am so disappointed in both of you because neither of you have the passion like I have.
Oh,
Oh,
here we
I have the
go.
guys.
passion. I want to be the GM of the Toronto Maple Leafs. I want to do all the things and create all the chaos and be open about what's going on and answer the tough questions and say you should ask what he meant when there were too many passengers. I want to create chaos with my passion for the Leafs. So I will
Oh my God, I
marry
love it.
Toronto. I This is hard. I'm gonna fuck Dallas only because I love Jim Nill, does a great job. I'm not a big fan of being under the pressure of a head coaching search right now. I think that's just an extra
Fair.
variable in this timeline that just kind of stinks. Um, I think they'll probably come through with a really solid choice, but I wouldn't love that, right? We're kind of late for and everything else that still has to happen. Um, and I'm going to kill Vegas because I I like that actually might be the perfect place for me because I could just make cutthroat decisions and not care. But I don't, I just, the vibes around, they do these things and yes, they win, but at what cost? And I don't know if I want to be affiliated with that as my culture.
Because if you're not as cutthroat, then it's like, see, she doesn't have the balls to do what they just did,
Well, I
right? Like
don't
it's a
have balls
losing battle.
actually, so it's true.
Yeah. Then that's the conversation, right? Like this is why you can't let a woman lead. She can't make the tough decisions. Like I feel like it's a losing battle.
And what a note to end on, my friends. That will do it for this week's episode. As always, we would love to hear from you when we're not talking with you on an episode. You can follow us at 2_much_man on YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram, and at 2-much-man on Blue Sky. You can also submit questions. I will name no names to protect the guilty, but it was suggested that we need to do a mailbag episode. So if that's what you people want, get the
Ooh,
questions
I'd love
in
that.
Ooh.
so that we could answer them. Just send them to us on social and we will try to attend to them. Until we talk again, though, my friends, we wish all of you a wonderful, active, passionate Pride Month. And we ask that you please do something, no matter how big or small, to make sure that hockey truly is for everyone. We will talk to you soon.
Love ya.
Bye.